guys, I'm Amanda, the Botanical Brunette, and welcome to my channel. So I almost didn't do this video today. I just got back from San Francisco. I was out there for a week, walking around doing like 8 to 11 miles a day, just walking. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to San Francisco, but the hills there are no joke. And I am so stubborn that I'm like, I'm gonna walk everywhere. So I got myself some shin splints, which are really fun. They're basically like little tears in the muscle of your shin, so I definitely did some damage, so I'm gonna have to be a little restful today. I was going to do a plant tours video for you guys, but I just cannot do it. Also, we are getting into a tropical storm, so it's just really fun. So I almost did not film a video today, but I was like, you know what? I really wanted to do this video for you guys. I just did not know where I could fill it into my plan. I thought this was a perfect opportunity. So today we're going to be talking about pon. I've had a lot of questions. I've seen off and on a lot of people starting to transition a lot of their semi-hydroponic plants, or really just like plants here and there, into pon. Over a month ago, I went ahead and just bought some pon, and I wanted to test it out before I did this video and really just make sure, like, A, I knew what I was doing, and B, that I was actually successful with it, because I could show you guys the downsides of it, but I already did that with my leca video, so I don't want to like keep putting down semi-hydroponics. And I think I found the substrate that works for me, because I love pon. Pon for me has literally 360'd a couple of my plants, like this Alocasia Zebrina. So today I'm gonna go over basically what is pon, how to use it. I'm going to repot a cutting into pon, and I'll show you some plants that I have already transitioned into pon just to see how well they're doing. Let's talk about what is pon. Pon is a semi-hydroponic rocky substrate, very similar to leca. So the difference between leca and pon is leca is a clay ball, very airy kind of clay ball, and pon is made out of essentially rocks. So pon is made out of zeolites, pumice, lava rock, and slow release fertilizer. A lot of people liked pon over leca for a couple reasons, and these are also going to be reasons why I like it versus leca. I know this may not be a fair comparison because I did do a full video on why I don't like leca, but I absolutely love pon because it holds your plants down really well. So I don't know if you've ever tried to repot a plant into leca, or transition a plant, or really just had an issue with your plant being stable in the leca. Because this is a rocky substrate, it's going to hold your plant a little bit better. It's going to be more dense, and it's going to be a little bit heavier than leca, so it will basically hold that plant down better. Another thing that I love about pon is that it also contains nutrients. So when you buy pon, there's a company that makes pon, and when you buy that, it actually has slow release fertilizer in the substrate already. So usually you don't have to repot your plants for another 6 months to a year. At least with me, when I was doing leca, it basically was so hard for me to keep up with the fertilizing and just this and that. It was just a lot, and this kind of goes for really any hydroponics, but I love the fact that you don't have to water as often. It kind of takes away from the guesswork of watering your plants. So a lot of times pon is kept in either a cover pot or in a glass jar. I would recommend, if you're doing pon, to keep it in something that's transparent, so you'll be able to kind of see the roots and also see where the water level's at. So for instance, I have this Alocasia micholitziana that I have been transitioning. These are actually, I believe there's 4 or 5 corms in here that have just completely sprouted out since I planted it in the pon. So this is really nice. I mean, I think that one of the other benefits of Pon is it's just, I feel like, more aesthetically pleasing. Like the Pon is just really pretty. I mean, I'm all about like the white pots, but I just love the look of like, it kind of reminds me of like Fruity Pebbles. And it's just so pretty. And like I said, you can see the water level. So if I move it around, you can see that the water level is about here. So you can kind of see like where the water's at. Now that is with any hydroponics. You can do that with leca as well. You can, you know, just make sure that you have the water at a certain level. I do find that it's a little bit harder to see with the Pon versus leca because leca is there's so much more space in between versus the Pon where it's so condensedly packed that sometimes it's not as easy to gauge where the water is at, but it's still visible. You can still see it. So a couple of things that I don't love about Pon and really just any hydroponics in general that I have used in the past is that a lot of times they're messy. I am such a messy person. I get water everywhere. The substrate I wind up getting all over the place. To the point where sometimes my husband will be walking around barefoot and step on rocks, which is never pleasant. It's kind of like stepping on Legos. They're sharp, they're not like super soft and whatever. But it's also really shocking when you step on like leca too, because you feel like you stepped on like, I don't know, it's like crunchy, like collapses really easily. It's like a malted milk ball. But a little bit harder. But any of the semi-hydroponics that I've ever used in the past have just been super messy. I know that soil can get messy too and, you know, whatever, but I just find that it's just a lot more of a hassle than doing, you know, like repotting and stuff like that. But after you get it repotted and you clean it up and stuff, it is the easiest thing. I think it's actually probably easier than soil. Another thing that's a little annoying with the Pon in general is that if you were to buy genuine Pon, it's really expensive. So that's where I'm going to get into today. So I actually wound up doing some deep dive research into what exactly is Pon. What is it made out of and everything. I've also seen a couple videos of people here and there making their own Pon. So that's what I did. I went online and I bought a bonsai mix. So this bonsai mix that I got from Amazon contains red lava rock, black lava rock, green zeolite, and a couple other different types of rocks and minerals that are not in Pon, but are completely fine. The only two things that the substrate that I bought doesn't have is it doesn't have pumice and it doesn't have any slow release fertilizer, which are super easy to add yourself. You can buy like Osmocote. I would recommend like Osmocote. It's those little like slow release fertilizer balls that you can add into the substrate. And then you can always just buy pumice or you can go without it. Honestly, I bought this mix and I don't even use Osmocote. I use my regular fertilizer. I use the Dynagrow. So I don't even use really the two things that it didn't come with. And this was a fraction of the price. I can't remember exactly how much I paid for it. I'll put it up here. I absolutely love this substrate. It works so well. But again, you can always add your own pumice or slow release fertilizer if you don't want to like play mad scientist and mixing your own fertilizers and stuff. So because I actually have this pre-made, so I have some of my fertilizer and liquid dirt in here, but this is just normal tap water. Also, I know that a lot of people, especially in the leca community, will use the pH up and down and they'll do all that. I've never done that and I've never had an issue with my plants. Even in Alocasia, I keep this in tap water and it has been completely fine. Let's talk about some of the plants that I have in Pon, and I will kind of go over some really fun transitions that I've done lately. So I showed you guys before, I showed you this Alocasia micholitziana. And if you look kind of closely, you can see some of the roots kind of popping through. I haven't had this in Pon that long. I've only had this in Pon for, I would say, 2 or 3 weeks. It hasn't really been that long, but it has been a good amount of time. And ever since then, I've had so much growth, like so much growth in the last couple of weeks. This actually only was a 2, maybe 3 leaf like cutting, and now I have this this corm that I had in there never sprouted anything, and now we have a new leaf. Like it's like madness, like it's just going crazy. This is a perfect substrate for alocasias. I will say that right now, this is like the best substrate for alocasias. I've been considering transitioning all my alocasias into pon, but I don't know. That, if you guys can see, this is actually just in a glass jar. So this does not have a cover pot. So I have to kind of eyeball it when I water it and make sure that the water doesn't hit below the, you want to make sure that the water doesn't, you know, you're not drowning the plant still. A lot of times with hydroponics, people say, oh, well, you want to make sure that you put the water in below the root line, but because it's hard to judge, and because the roots go all the way to the bottom, that's another thing you'll notice is the root growth is insane with pon, but it also grows downward, so the roots are going to grow toward the water. So even if you have a cover pot like I have on here, I don't know if I have any roots going down, but let me pull this out so you guys can see. So hopefully the substrate really like brings this brandy to life. But I do have it in a clear like plastic container. This was actually a container that my orchid came in from my last plant haul. But you can see like it's got some roots kind of coming through. It's just, it really works really, really well, honestly. For the filling of the water in the cover pot, I try to just do it like halfway. I honestly just kind of fill it halfway and kind of let it do its thing. Honestly though, but when I fill this up, it winds up filling all the way. So it's fine. I mean, I guess you can kind of essentially say like this one's a propagation just because it's in a good amount of water. But this Alocasia Zebrina was the first plant that I put in pon. Now, I'll tell you a little story. So if you guys are not familiar with my Alocasia Zebrina debacle, I've had so many issues with Alocasia Zebrina, but it's been my #1 wishlist plant for the longest time. So I really, really, really wanted one, and I didn't want to give up. So I desperately kept buying more, and this is actually the last one I bought, the one that I told you guys I will not buy another one. You guys will not let me buy another one. Out of desperation, I was like, you know what, like I don't even know what to do, like what the heck am I supposed to do? And I saw somebody on Instagram mention that they put their Alocasia Zebrina in semi-hydroponic. So I tried with the leca, and it was just so top heavy that it just kept falling over. It just was not loving it, and I'm just like, oh, the look of leca is just ugly. I just don't like it. So I'm like, you know what? Let me try pon. I keep hearing about it. I keep like seeing everything about it. Let me try it. Are you ready for this root? So these roots are a little over a month old, and this was actually just one leaf. So when I started, it was just this leaf, and this leaf was droopy. As you can see, I have it kind of like propped up. Actually, I wonder if I take this thing off, if it will fall down. No, so it's stable now. But before it was like completely falling over, and it was just not happy at all. It was just not happy. It did not like me or anything. And then this little leaf came out, and then while I was in San Fran, this leaf came out. So now I have 3 leaves. I never thought I would see this day. I thought, honestly, I thought this was a goner. As soon as I put this in pon, I was like, this leaf right here is gonna yellow and die and fall off, and then I'm gonna have no leaves, or I was really skeptic with putting it in water because I'm like, this plant, you look at it wrong and it root rots. So I'm like, I don't even know like if this is gonna work out. You guys ready for these roots? Look at these. That's not even the best part. It's facing me, guys. Look at all of those roots. This barely had any roots when I put it in here. And now it's like starting to like even root down. It's loving the pond so much. And I don't think I can transition it back into soil. I think this is just gonna be a plant that stays in pond forever. I'm totally fine with that. Like, that's fine. As long as it's happy, I will do whatever I can. So, but the reason why I did this video today is because I wanted to show you guys basically how I like DIY pond, which isn't really a DIY. It's kind of just a hack, I guess, if you will. And I wanted to repot these little Philodendron Gloriosum cuttings that came off of a chunk that I root rotted. But these are fine. These are starting to get some good roots on it. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna transition this into pond and we're gonna experiment with this guy, kind of like I did with the Brandi and the micholitziana. So that's what we're gonna be doing today. We're gonna be transitioning these two little cuttings into pond. So let's get started. Okay, so I have these little cuttings and I have these two jars. I can't actually decide which jar I wanna put it in. I feel like all the roots that grow in the pond wind up getting so big so fast, so I'm almost leaning towards this pink one. I also think it would be kind of pretty in the pink, but I'm not really sure. I might try this one first, and if it's just too much, then let me see like the difference between. I keep going back and forth. You know what? I'm actually gonna put it in this one just because it kind of fits it. It's almost a little too big. Yeah, and that will be perfect. What I do when I'm transitioning into pond is usually you'll want a cover pot, but you're essentially gonna do the same thing. If you wanna pretend this is a cover pot and this is a regular pot, you'd literally just do that. But instead we're skipping a step and this is gonna just be the jar that it's gonna live in. Now, this is a harder way to do it, so if you guys can follow this, then you guys will be able to follow it, you know, anyway. So when you first get to pond, it is not like super pretty. It's kind of, I'll show you So when you first get it, it's like kind of like rocky and kind of whatever. It winds up getting like better color once you wet it down. And I'm getting it all over my floor, but and it literally says on here that it's a bonsai mix. It's actually made for like when you like plant bonsais on top, because bonsais aren't, I assume they're not semi-hydroponic. But you know, whatever. So I filled this about 3/4 of the way just because we don't have a lot of roots yet. So I'm going to just kind of place these on top. I might like dig a little hole for it to kind of sit in, so it's a little more steady. And then do the same thing with this guy. probably should have grabbed like a little, like my little shovel that I have. Probably would have made a lot less mess, but it's fine. And I'll also have the that potting mix, the fake pond. I'll have it in my Amazon shop, so you guys can check that out if you guys are interested in it. I don't know if you guys know that, but I have like an Amazon shop. I opened it up just because I kept getting questions about everything that I use. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna add it all into the shop. That way, if anybody's curious on like what I use or this or that, like literally everything. The only thing that I don't have listed is my my big tall plant shelf, just because I got that at, I think at Target I got it. And they don't sell it anymore. And obviously they don't have it on Amazon, so. So that's basically it. So it is planted in there. The roots are probably pretty close to the top, but that will allow it to give it a lot more room and ability to kind of trail down, because that's what I've noticed. A lot of times when you have plants in soil, they'll kind of wrap around, like kind of more straight, where the pond kind of goes down. So I'm gonna show you something that isn't necessary, but you can do this. I do it just because I'm a neat freak and I kind of need everything cleaned as I'm cleaning. So what I like to do is close the bag before I dump it everywhere. Now I have this bowl and this thing of water because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flush it out. Now this is probably the hardest part if you don't have a cover pot, or if you don't have this in like a plastic pot or a clear, like, you know, if you wind up putting this in a cover pot. It's easier because you'll have drainage holes and it will just drain through, where this I'm gonna have to kind of maneuver it to, as you can see, it kind of gets smoky. It's kind of fun. So this is absolutely 100% not necessary. I would recommend this if you do have your plants in a cover pot, just to kind of drain some water through. You don't have to. I mean, it's just like, especially if you have it in a cover pot. You can also alternatively take the entire container and put it through a mesh strainer, which is something I might want to do maybe down the road, but for now, I'm just gonna kind of leave it like that. Now, that also wets all the rocks down. What lava rock does is it will absorb a lot of the water. So the lava rock will kind of help keep the plant moisturized and kind of help keep it wet. So now I'm going to take my fertilizer and liquid dirt and just kind of water it. Now I'm going to fill this almost all the way up because the roots are not really that low. I filled it to basically here. So you can kind of see like where the bubbles start to form. I don't know if the camera's picking that up, but you can tell like where the bubbles kind of like start to form is where it's filled to. And the water's kind of murky. Again, you can run it through a mesh strainer and just get rid of any of that stuff. You can just keep pouring water through, but for the sake of your guys' sanity and mine, I'm just going to keep it in the pot that it's, you know, how dirty it is. It's totally fine. So that's basically it. That is how you put a plant in pon. That's basically all I've done. I know that some things I do for my plants, some people may be like, that's not how you do it, but I have not had any issues with my plants in over a month, so I think I'm okay. I honestly swear by this. Now, I do say it's not expensive, but the quantity of plants that I have in my collection, I want to transition them all into pon, but it will be a lot of money to get that completely transitioned. Even if I just use the bonsai mix and everything like that, it's still going to be pretty pricey. I would recommend, if you have a plant that you want to transition into pon, I would maybe start off with maybe an alocasia or a plant that is kind of struggling or you can't keep up with watering. Those would be plants that I would recommend you start out with, but also making sure that it's a plant that if you do wind up killing it, it will be easily replaced and you won't be completely heartbroken. Don't transition for the first time a Monstera alba or anything like that, a plant that you can't get again, or at least not easily. So that's basically it. Let me know in the comments if you guys have any questions or any concerns or anything that I didn't touch on. Like I said, I kind of wanted to just do this kind of quickly and kind of do like a kind of a intro into pon. This wasn't a planned video, so I just kind of jumped in and did this. I wanted to repot this philodendron into pon, so I was excited to go ahead and have the opportunity to do that, just because I could not do my plant chores video today. My plants are probably going to be struggling for a little bit, or at least I'm just going to have to water them sparingly. But that's basically it. So again, let me know in the comments if you have any questions or anything like that, and I hope you guys all have a great day and stay botanical.